They vanish, not just disappear from your phone screen. They vanish from your life, from your emotional radar, from the connection you were trying to build. One moment they're there, engaging, connected, laughing, responding. The next, cold, silent, distant. You check your messages. You read old conversations looking for clues. You overthink every word, every emoji, every pause. The anxiety begins to rise. Your mind spins stories that whisper, you weren't enough. You pushed them away. You did something wrong. Stop that voice lying to you. It isn't the voice of truth. It's the voice of conditioning, of emotional damage passed down through years of being taught that if someone leaves, it's because you failed. But what if that wasn't true? What if the silence isn't rejection? What if the distance isn't disinterest? What if what you're really seeing is obsession, hidden beneath a mask of emotional retreat? You were told love looks like closeness, and that's true, but not for everyone. For some, love looks like fear, not because they don't care, but because they care so deeply that it threatens the identity they've built to survive. For the avoidant, connection doesn't just open the door to another person. It opens the floodgates to vulnerability, and vulnerability to them feels like danger, so they pull back, not because you don't matter, but because you do. In fact, you matter so much that it shakes them. It rattles the walls of protection they've carefully built. They see your presence, your consistency, your love, your strength, and instead of relaxing into it, they panic. They withdraw not out of dislike, but out of emotional overwhelm. But you on the receiving end are left confused. You're not just confused, you're wounded. You think, if I was really valuable, they wouldn't leave? But here's the real truth. Some people leave because you're valuable and they don't believe they're enough to match what you offer. This is not an excuse. It's an exposure. It's time to stop interpreting absence as your failure. It's time to stop equating emotional unavailability with your lack of worth. Their distance is not a mirror of your brokenness. It's a reflection of their inner war. Avoidant behavior isn't just silence. It's noise in a different language. It's the loud sound of fear disguised as detachment. It's the screaming echo of emotion trapped beneath trauma. So when they ghost you, it might not mean they don't feel. It might mean they're overwhelmed by how much they do. Here's where you must draw the line between compassion and self-destruction. You can understand someone's wounds without letting them cut you open. You can recognize their fear without making it your burden. You can see their internal chaos without inviting it into your peace. The wake-up call is this: stop giving all your power to someone else's silence. Stop shrinking every time they pull away. Start realizing your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to embrace it. If they were truly indifferent, they wouldn't watch from a distance. They wouldn't hover. They wouldn't leave the door slightly cracked. Indifference is clean, but what you're experiencing isn't clean. It's messy, erratic, confusing, and emotionally charged. That's not rejection. That's obsession masked by avoidance. You are not here to chase people who run from what you naturally are. You are not meant to keep proving your worth to someone who isn't ready to receive it. The ones who pull away the hardest are often the ones who feel the most. But their fear is not your responsibility to fix. You've spent enough nights wondering what you did wrong. You've apologized for being too much when all you did was show up with authenticity. You've questioned yourself in the shadow of someone else's confusion. That ends now. You are not an option. You are not a backup plan. You are not a test for someone's emotional maturity. You are a force, steady, powerful, loving, and worthy. And just because someone can't meet you where you are doesn't mean you lower your standard. It means you rise even higher. So hear this clearly: their silence does not define you. Their fear does not limit you. Their obsession may be hidden, but your power isn't. This is your wake-up call. Not to chase, but to rise. Not to beg, but to believe. Not to doubt, but to declare that your value remains whether they come close or drift away. Because what you bring to the table isn't ordinary, and some people simply aren't ready for it. They want you, but they can't handle wanting you. They crave closeness, but the moment it gets real, they run. They say they want deep love, connection, and loyalty, yet they flinch when you offer exactly that. It's a contradiction that can tear your heart apart if you don't understand it. This is the paradox of avoidance. Avoidants walk a tightrope between longing and fear. Deep down, they desire intimacy as much as anyone. They want to be seen, heard, accepted. They want someone who understands them. Someone who holds space for their complexity without trying to change them. But here's the twist: the moment that kind of love shows up, they panic. They're not pushing you away because you're doing too much. They're pulling away because your presence touches something raw inside of them. You stir emotions they've buried for years. You make them feel exposed, vulnerable. And vulnerability for them feels like weakness, danger, or loss of control. They've spent most of their life believing that emotional independence equals safety. Maybe they grew up with love that was conditional, love they had to earn, love they had to chase. Or maybe love was absent altogether, so they learned to survive by not needing anyone. Now, when love shows up freely without demand, without manipulation, without a price, they don't know what to do with it. They mistake peace for boredom. They interpret stability as threat. They think, if I let you close, you'll see my flaws. You'll hurt me. You'll leave me, so I'll leave first. And so they run. They ghost. They shut down. They make excuses. They create emotional distance where there once was connection. Not because they don't care, but because caring exposes their deepest fear, abandonment. You may wonder how someone can feel so much and do so little, how they can act cold when their energy feels warm, how they can disappear without explanation and return without apology. It's because they're emotionally split, two parts fighting inside the same body. One part wants to stay, one part wants to leave. One part is drawn to you like gravity. The other part is terrified of being consumed. So instead of choosing, they sabotage. They avoid, they shut doors that they secretly hope you'll keep knocking on. But here's what you need to understand. And never forget, avoidance is an absence of emotion. It's an overload of it. So much emotion that they don't know how to regulate it. So instead, they do what they've always done. They run. You're not imagining things when you feel the pull, even when they've gone silent. You're not crazy when you sense they're still connected, still thinking about you, still emotionally entangled. That's because the obsession doesn't disappear. It simply hides beneath layers of fear. But let this be a revelation. Just because someone is emotionally overwhelmed doesn't mean you have to carry the weight of their confusion. Just because they feel deeply doesn't mean they're ready to love responsibly. Just because they obsess doesn't mean they're capable of commitment. You are not here to be the therapist for someone else's trauma. You are not here to wait for them to fix what they refuse to confront. The paradox is real, but it's not your job to solve it. Recognize the patterns, yes. Understand the behavior, yes. But don't lose yourself trying to decode someone who hasn't yet decided they're ready to be known. The paradox of avoidance will make you think you're chasing love when you're really chasing fear. You'll think you're trying to connect, when in reality, you're trying to convince someone that it's safe to feel. That's not your burden. That's not your role. Love should not feel like a puzzle you were never given the pieces to. It should not require you to guess, shrink, or H in silence. And it should never make you feel like you're too much, too needy, too intense, when all you're offering is real connection. The paradox may exist, but your clarity is greater than their confusion. You don't need to lower your emotional frequency just to meet someone in their chaos. You can rise above it. And in doing so, you create space for real, secure mutual love to find you. There's power in understanding, but greater power in walking away from what drains your spirit. The paradox of avoidance is tragic, but is not your destiny. You feel it in your chest. That tightening, that ache, that lingering heaviness that whispers, something must be wrong with me. You replay every word you said, every message, every moment. You go back and analyze your tone, your timing, your truth. And somehow you always arrive at the same brutal conclusion. I must have been too much. But hear this now, and hear it like it's your soul waking up from a deep sleep. You were never the problem. You were honest. You showed up with your heart open. You loved fully. You asked for presence, for clarity, for connection, and in return, you were met with distance. You asked for communication. They gave you silence. You offered depth, and they retreated to the surface. That's not your failure. That's their fear. The emotional roller coaster they put you on wasn't because you were unstable. It was because they could handle stability. When love becomes real, it demands something more than words. It demands availability, and not everyone is ready to be available. Not everyone is ready to be seen. You didn't push them away by caring too much. You didn't overwhelm them by being present. You simply reflected something they weren't ready to face, a truth. Your presence exposed their avoidance. Your love exposed their walls. Your consistency exposed their inconsistency. They didn't retreat because you were broken. They retreated because you were whole. This is the painful irony. The more real you were, the more they pulled away. And it made you question whether love means becoming less expressive, less available, less you. But don't you dare shrink to fit someone else's comfort zone. Don't you dare contort your soul just to avoid being too much for someone too fearful. You are not too much. You're just too real for someone who's hiding behind emotional masks. The person who couldn't handle you wasn't rejecting you. They were rejecting themselves in your reflection. Your strength made them confront their fragility. Your openness reminded them of the vulnerability they've been running from their whole life. And instead of growing through it, they withdrew. But listen closely, you are not responsible for their wounds. You didn't create the trauma they carry. You didn't plant the fear in their heart. And it is not your job to heal what they refuse to acknowledge. You are allowed to care deeply without carrying the burden of someone else's emotional paralysis. Because you were hurt. Yes, you were confused. Yes, you wanted answers. And instead you got silence. But even in their silence, you learned something sacred. You are worth more than crumbs. You are worthy of someone who meets you with the same energy, the same devotion, the same emotional courage. And if someone doesn't have the capacity to love at your level, that's not a statement about your worth. That's a reflection of their limitation. Stop rewriting your story through their behavior. Stop internalizing their detachment as evidence that you're unlovable. Stop shrinking every time someone else fails to show up. Because this pain, this confusion, this moment, it's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your rise. You were never meant to beg for love. You were never meant to second guess your light just because someone else couldn't handle the brightness. You are not here to convince someone to choose you. You are here to choose yourself. So let this be your turning point. Let this be the moment you stop asking, what did I do wrong? And start declaring, I did everything right by being real. Let this be the moment you reclaim your worth. Not because someone finally validated it, but because you finally remembered it. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not the cause of their confusion. You are a mirror. And sometimes when people see themselves clearly for the first time, it terrifies them. But that fear is not your fault. And it's not your fight. So stand tall, love deeper, trust louder, and never again let someone's emotional absence make you question your value. Because you were never the problem. You are the light. Obsession doesn't always come with roses and confessions. Sometimes it comes in silence, in distant absence. It hides behind unread messages, unanswered calls, and the painful echo of conversations that ended too soon. You think they're gone, moved on, over it. But deep beneath their emotional ice, something else is burning, and you can feel it. That's not your imagination. That's the presence of hidden obsession. It doesn't show itself in the ways you expect, not in passionate words or romantic gestures, but in patterns that don't make sense on the surface. They avoid you, yet they never fully let go. They block you, then check your stories. They disappear, then reappear acting casual, like nothing happened. They ghost you, only to linger in your life in strange and haunting ways. Why? Because avoidance isn't always absence. Sometimes it's obsession camouflaged by fear. See, obsession isn't always loud. It can be quiet, subtle, strategic. It shows up when someone is emotionally overwhelmed but can't detach completely. It's that internal tug of war between, I need you, and I'm afraid of needing you. So they don't speak, but they don't move on either. They don't hold you, but they don't release you. They don't give you love, but they drain your energy. They may not message you, but they're watching. They may not talk to you, but they're thinking about you constantly. They may not engage, but they're keeping score. Every time you post, every time you glow, every time you grow, they're not saying a word, but never letting go. That's not rejection. That's a soul that's emotionally imprisoned, obsessed with you, but incapable of showing up for you. They retreat, not because you don't mean anything, but because you mean too much. And that level of emotional intensity threatens everything they've used to protect themselves. They see your strength, your openness, your power. And instead of stepping into the light with you, they stay in the shadows, watching, wondering, wanting this isn't love. This is emotional paralysis. And here's the dangerous part. When you don't understand this dynamic, you begin to interpret their avoidance as your inadequacy. You think if they really felt something, they'd show it. But not everyone has the capacity to act on what they feel. Some people feel deeply and act destructively. Some people love you, but love their comfort zone more. Their obsession with you doesn't mean they're good for you. Their fear of losing you doesn't mean they're ready to hold you. Their inability to let go doesn't mean you should stay. Because obsession without action is bondage. It keeps you tied to someone who feeds on your energy, but starves you of commitment. It keeps you locked in an emotional waiting room, always hoping, always guessing, always hurting. You were not created to be someone's secret addiction. You were not created to be silently desired, but outwardly dismissed. That is not love. That is a cycle. And cycles are meant to be broken, especially the ones that keep you small. Their hidden obsession may feel like proof that you mattered, but real love doesn't hide. It doesn't vanish. It doesn't watch you suffer and say nothing. It doesn't withhold clarity, respect, or commitment. Real love shows up boldly, clearly, consistently. So if they're still watching, let them. If they're still obsessed, let them be. But don't let that obsession convince you to shrink, settle, or stay. You don't need someone to be obsessed with you. You need someone to be ready for you, present with you, honest with you. And if they can't do that, then they don't deserve a front row seat in your story. This is where your clarity becomes your freedom. You no longer need to read between the lines. You no longer need to interpret silence as mystery. You now know the truth. They're obsessed, but hiding. They're connected, but afraid. They're attached, but unavailable. And none of that has anything to do with your worth. So lift your head. Straighten your spine. Let go of the illusion that this is love, because obsession trapped in avoidance is not romantic. It's toxic. You don't need to be watched. You need to be seen. You don't need to be chased. You need to be chosen. And you don't need to be desired from a distance. You deserve to be loved up close, fully and fearlessly. You've waited long enough. You've lingered in confusion. You've begged the universe for answers, for closure, for a sign that you mattered. You've poured yourself into someone who couldn't even meet you halfway, and it left you empty. But this moment, this right here, is your turning point. The moment where you flip the script. No more decoding mixed signals. No more trying to interpret the silence of someone who can't even interpret their own emotions. No more shrinking every time they withdraw, ghost, or give you just enough to keep you hoping. Because now, you reclaim your power. It begins with a decision to stop looking outward for what you already carry within. You are not the desperate one. You are not the confused one. You are not the emotionally unstable one. You are simply connected to someone whose fear made you question your truth. You were honest. They were inconsistent. You were open. They were avoidant. You were loyal. They were elusive. And the time has come for you to stop mirroring their dysfunction and start embodying your clarity. Because when you allow someone's avoidance to control your emotions, you surrender your strength. You give them permission to become the narrator of a story that was never theirs to write. You must take the pen back. Flip the story from, I wasn't enough, to they weren't ready from maybe I was too intense to my depth demands emotional maturity from I should have done more to I already gave too much to someone who gave too little. It's time to break the mental patterns that keep you spinning in circles, waiting for clarity from someone drowning in confusion. Their silence is not a riddle for you to solve. Their disappearance is not a test for you to pass. Their obsession does not equate to healthy love. And their inability to choose you clearly is not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their fear-based operating system. When you flip the script, you stop blaming yourself for what was never yours to carry. You stop explaining away red flags. You stop overfunctioning to keep a connection alive that is draining you spiritually, and something powerful happens. Your energy begins to return. Your mind becomes clear. Your boundaries get stronger. You stop asking, why aren't they showing up? And start asking, why am I still tolerating their absence? You stop hoping they'll change, and you start changing your response to what's been hurting you. You stop chasing crumbs when you were created for a feast. Reclaiming your power doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying. You stop dragging dead weight up a hill you were never meant to climb alone. You stop confusing emotional chaos with passion and inconsistency with connection. You don't owe anyone another ounce of your peace. You don't owe them explanations, access, or one more minute of your sacred energy. If they weren't ready when you were loving them at your highest level, they don't get to return when you finally learned how to love yourself even more. Let them obsess. Let them overthink. Let them live in the shadows of what if. That's not your battle anymore. You've traded begging for boundaries. You've replaced anxiety with alignment. You've evolved past the point of settling for half love from a half present person. Your time, your energy, your attention. These are sacred currencies. And now they belong to someone who's been neglected for too long. You are the prize. You are the peace. You are the closure. And you no longer wait for someone else to validate what your soul already knows. You are powerful, whole, and worthy with or without them. This isn't just about relationships. This is about reclaiming your identity, reclaiming your voice, reclaiming your life from the grip of emotional confusion, and rewriting a story where you no longer play the role of the one who waits, doubts, or begs. You now become the one who walks forward, healed, whole, and unshackable. So flip the script, change the narrative, and let the next chapter be the one where you choose you, fully, fiercely, unapologetically. You were never meant to live in emotional limbo. You were never meant to sit on the edge of someone else's indecision. Heart in hand, spirit on pause, waiting for clarity that never comes, for closure that's always out of reach, for love that never quite lands in your hands. You were not born to be an emotional hostage, but that's what happens when you tie your peace to someone else's confusion, when their avoidance becomes your obsession, when you begin to believe that their silence holds your answers and their distance defines your worth. Slowly, piece by piece, your identity starts to erode, and you don't even see it happening. You stop laughing the same. You stop dreaming the same. You second guess your heart. You censor your voice. You wonder if maybe, just maybe, you're asking for too much when all you've ever wanted was truth. This is the prison of emotional hostage. The door isn't locked, but you stay anyway. Why? Because part of you still hopes, still believes they'll come back, still believes they'll wake up one day, realize your worth, and meet you in the place you've been waiting for them. But deep down, you know that if they were going to choose you, they would have. You know that love doesn't leave you guessing. You know that when someone truly values your presence, they don't risk losing it. And yet you stay, you replay, you hope, you hurt. Because the hardest chains to break aren't made of iron. They're made of invisible attachment. But here's the truth that will shatter those chains. Someone else's inability to show up for you does not mean you need to stop showing up for yourself. Let that sink in. You do not have to wait for their emotional maturity to arrive in order to start healing. You do not need their closure to begin your freedom. You do not need their validation to reclaim your voice. Stop giving them power they never earned. Stop romanticizing their return. Stop thinking their obsession means they care, because obsession without commitment is just control in disguise. They may not say your name out loud, but they still think about you. They may not be in your life, but they haven't truly let go. They may avoid you, but they watch you. And that watching, that silent obsession isn't love. It's a symptom of emotional cowardice. You are not a playground for someone's unprocessed trauma. You are not a holding space for someone afraid to face themselves. You are not a convenience. You are not a fallback plan. You are not an emotional escape hatch when they feel lonely, unworthy, or lost. You are a living, breathing soul, full of fire, love, purpose, and power. You don't belong in the corner of someone's life waiting to be chosen. You don't belong in the shadows of someone's indecision, hoping they'll finally grow up and love you right. You belong in the light, walking forward with your head high, your heart open, and your standards raised. And yes, walking away may hurt. Yes, letting go may feel like ripping something from your chest. But holding on to someone who can't love you the way you deserve, that's what truly breaks you. This is your moment to step out of the emotional prison. This is where you choose your sanity over their silence, your peace over their pattern, your future over their fear. Say it with your whole being, no more emotional hostage. Not one more night wondering what you did wrong. Not one more second waiting on someone to figure out what they feel. Not one more day spent in confusion when you were made for clarity. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are not the problem. You are free. And the moment you claim that truth, not just with your words, but with your actions, you sever the invisible chain that kept you stuck in their orbit. You stop spinning in someone else's emotional gravity and you rise into your own. You owe it to your younger self, your future self, and your healing heart to walk away from what wounds you, no matter how obsessed they are, no matter how deep the connection feels. Because obsession is not love. Confusion is not connection. And avoidance is not affection. You are no longer available for emotional captivity. You are available only for love that's whole, clear, grounded, and present. You are free, and you are not going back. This is your moment, right here, right now. The moment where you decide that your life will no longer be defined by the emotional limitations of someone else. No more waiting, no more wondering, no more bending just to keep a one-sided connection alive. Because the truth has arrived like a flood. You were never rejected. You were just too real for someone still hiding. And now you're done watering yourself down for people who can't drink deeply from the well of your soul. This is your breakthrough, not the soft kind, not the quiet kind, but the kind that shakes the very ground beneath you, the kind that requires you to stop looking backward, to stop hoping they'll come back with better intentions, to stop fantasizing about what could be, and to finally, powerfully embrace what is. You are not here to be almost chosen. You are not here to be almost healed. You are here to rise fully, fearlessly, and without apology. Yes, they might still be obsessed with you. Yes, their silence might still echo with unspoken emotions. Yes, they might still orbit your life in ways that confuse your heart. But that obsession is not your salvation. It's your distraction. And you've outgrown it. You don't need someone to obsess over you. You need someone who will stand with you. You need someone who doesn't just feel deeply, but chooses you clearly, shows up consistently, speaks honestly, loves without running. So the decision is yours now. Will you stay trapped in the maze of their mixed signals? Or will you walk through the door that leads to your wholeness? Will you keep waiting for closure? Or will you become the closure? Will you keep asking, what if they come back? Or will you ask, why did I ever leave myself? This is your breakthrough, not theirs. It's not about whether they heal. It's not about whether they understand what they lost. It's not about whether they return. It's about whether you will rise. Because the most dangerous thing about being attached to someone who is emotionally unavailable is that you become unavailable to yourself. You forget your own needs, your own dreams, your own inner voice, all in the hope that they'll finally see you. But now you see you. You see the strength it took to care that deeply. You see the beauty in your ability to feel, to give, to hope, even when they couldn't meet you there. And now you reclaim that energy. You pull it back from every late night thought, every unanswered question, every what if that haunted your peace. You call yourself home. You speak to your own soul and say, I'm done betraying myself in the name of potential. From this moment forward, you choose love that shows up, love that builds, not breaks, love that brings clarity, not confusion, love that aligns with your highest self, not your wounds. You are not a waiting room. You are a destiny. You're not a backup plan. You are a divine purpose. You are not what someone avoided. You are what someone unhealed couldn't receive. So take a deep breath. Stand up, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Let the version of you that once begged for love fall away. Let the version of you that kept quiet to keep the peace be laid to rest. You have broken the cycle. You have ended the loop. You have outgrown the need to be needed by someone afraid to need anyone. And now you step into the next chapter. Bold, free, whole. Not because someone finally came back, but because you finally came home to yourself. This isn't just the end of the obsession. It's the beginning of your power. The silence they gave you, you turned it into strength. The distance they created, you turned it into direction. The rejection you thought you faced, you turned it into revelation. You are not their prisoner anymore. You are your own revolution. So go, live, love, rise. And never again settle for anything less than what mirrors the love you've always carried inside.